Abhinav Bhadra present over here to give a brief introduction of Mr. Narayan Hariharan. Mr. Narayan Hariharan is a human resource professional who moved to corporate relations and business development. He is a science graduate from University of Mumbai. He completed master's degree in personnel management from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. He has also completed graduation in social sciences from University of Stockholm, Sweden, and is Bachelor of General Law from University of Mumbai. He has experience in engineering, pharmaceuticals, chemical, aviation, infrastructure, and power. He worked with Procter & Gamble as personnel officer. He was with Otis Elevator Company as human resource manager. He set up a greenfield project for SM Dichem at Baramati. Vice President, Resource Management Jet Airways, Senior Vice President, Chairman Office in Jet Airways. He was associated with the takeover of Sahara by Jet in 2006. Short exposure to GVK as Director Corporate Relations and is now with Adani Enterprises as President Corporate Affairs. He was a faculty at Tata Institute for Social Sciences during 1987 to 2003 for final year students. It's a pleasure to have you, sir, with us today. The podium is all yours.
Okay, very good morning to all of you. First of all, I want to thank Colonel Balasubramaniam for inviting me today. I had the opportunity of meeting him about 10 years back when I was with Jet Airways. And when I come here today, I can really understand the hard work, the dedication, and what vision and passion is all about. Because today in front of me, I see an organization which possibly, as somebody mentioned, has been listed as the 28th or 25th in the national list of colleges. But I'm very certain that in possibly another 5-7 years, it will possibly go to the top 10 in the country today. My best wishes to all of you. And I think this can't be possible unless and until there is a very, very strong base of teachers, committed academicians, as one would call them, and also non-teaching staff behind this institute. And I think before we start anything today, I think as a good student of human resource, I think we should offer them salutations to the highest level. Sir, my salutations to all of you, General Patil, the other faculty members, Dr. Milind Oak, and the rest of the team. I think you put in a very great show. Now, as I was told that there's going to be about half an hour of presentation and then question answers. So I, with your permission, will go through a very prepared text. The only reason why I would like to go through a prepared text so that I could put things in a little perspective for all of you. This is an academic industry interaction, as we have been told. So it will possibly help me and help you to just understand what is expected out of me, and then based on that, I could take over some questions. So I will go through the prepared text with your permission, if it is okay. India today has more people who are significantly wealthier than those 10 years ago. It is also true that more people in India are hungry and live below the poverty line that they did 10 years ago. These are based on statistics that are available all over the country. We in India face a unique paradox of growth in economic prosperity coupled with a diminishing social prosperity at a scale which no other developing country is witnessing. Information technology is operating side by side with agriculture with the least advantage to one another. The business environment ratings, which are prepared by international agencies, give very low scores to India when it comes to business environment. The market orientation, the high corporate taxes, and prevalence of trade barriers are aimed at helping certain domestic producers. The ratings on institution category is also low, and so is the level of our bureaucracy. Moreover, in the recent past, stories of corruption and related issues have tarnished our image to a great extent. Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Taiwan, and including Vietnam, they are faring better than us on many of these indicators. The World Bank study on doing business in 2013 ranks India very low. We are scoring 132 among 185 countries. This is a concern to us, especially considering matters relating to problems of land acquisition, labor issues, reforms, legal matters, and liquidity, and most importantly, availability of skilled manpower. There are significant barriers as far as the Indian industry is concerned in terms of entrepreneurship. There are talks that there are very few venture capitalists who are willing to fund Indians. There are very few role models in India. You know, when we talk about students of HR, we always talk about role models, and there are very few people that we would like to emulate. Our capacity for risk-taking is also considered to be very low. And unfortunately, we also suffer from a complex of social stigma which is associated to failure. In fact, the world rewards people who are successful, but unfortunately, on the other side, when we don't do well, we are often castigated. It is tempting to blame convenient scapegoats, infrastructure, the politician-government nexus, and also corruption. It is also clear that blame is a luxury of the old age. An Indian entrepreneur today understands and figures out what he needs to do, and often manages to overcome many of these issues that we talked about, whether it is issues of infrastructure or other matters. As far as the seminar is concerned or the workshop is concerned, I would like to speak about 6 major challenges as far as the general business scenario is concerned. And in my opinion, these are: 1, managing risks. The second is improving competitiveness. The third is flexibility. Fourth is cost effectiveness. Fifth is people issues. And sixth is infrastructure. Now let us examine each of them in very quick way. Managing risks emerges as one of the primary challenges in the corporate sector. Risk management is important during normal conditions and assumes greater significance, especially when there are downturns. This is due to issues of volatility outside and where there are threats as far as the organization's workings are concerned. And we need to capitalize on opportunities so that we are able to overcome these issues. The next issue we talk about is competitiveness. This, I think, is the second biggest challenge for business today. With global integration and globalization, Indian firms are becoming global competitors. More and more Indian firms, private as well as public, are venturing out through acquisitions abroad. Increased exports, listing on foreign stock markets are becoming very, very common. Although there is global competition, we are also being able to overcome some of the issues relating to the domestic economy. There are concerns on infrastructure, high costs of capital, rigid labor markets, persistent problems relating to availability of power, for example, labor issues, and high transaction costs, and a great degree of uncertainty because of policy issues. The Government of India, in the recent past, had announced special economic zones. These were in the line of what other countries around the world did. The SEZ Act was aimed to attract capital. Unfortunately, many of these models have not succeeded. We talk about problems relating to land. All of you would have read about what has happened in Singur. All of you would be reading about what's happening today in Haldia. where ABG is into issues, and we also talk about other SEZs in the country. So these policy changes that happened in 2006 have really not gone a big way. There are the talks that these SEZs will help us to overcome the issue of competitiveness. In other words, produce products which are globally competitive. But unfortunately, from an HR point of view, there is growing antagonism between managements and labor in many of these SEZs. Workers offer report of constraints in forming unions due to support from the district administration and the state. Political unions and enterprise unions are problems that confront managements all over. Managements wants unions that are accommodative and willing to listen, while workers need unions which are militant and able to deliver. Now here is one of the major paradoxes which are happening today in the Indian, which I will talk about a little later. In the other situation, maintaining flexibility as one of the constraints is also a challenge. Remaining flexible will entail responding quickly to customer needs. Now all of us today who are in the 21st century business all talk about the voice of the customer. We talk about the ability for people to produce a project or a product in the market as early as possible. In fact, better than what the competition provides. So we need to be very, very flexible in our manufacturing. Unfortunately, many of the organizations don't concentrate on processes. We just want to ensure that we make a product, but unfortunately, all types of processes which are required are not really done very well, which causes problems for us in the future. Flexibility without cost effectiveness cannot do the trick. Ensuring high quality is today a very, very important aspect of our business. And how we are able to manage low costs is one of the issues that young people like you will have to look at a later point of time. Globalization has become a major force behind liberalization and privatization in the world. When we speak about competition, we have to talk about individual organizations that are competitive. We talk about global competitive index, we talk about state competitive index. We also have to examine individual firms and how do they compete in the marketplace. Now, competitiveness is a very complex word. It requires firms, governments, mechanisms to be readjusted and reoriented for long-term success. On a micro level, there is a need for labor reforms and improvements in the working conditions among a large canvas of firms, which is also have to take away the problems in terms of labor laws. We will talk about it a little later once again. The next major issue relating to business in India is infrastructure. Now, all of you read about matters of lack of power, lack of coal, lack of transmission lines, wastages. These are all issues which are in the field of infrastructure. There has been, unfortunately, not much done in this area, although the government of the day has been talking about large private-public partnership. And you would have read about the way in which the government is attempting to bring investment in the PPP model, including that of education. For example, organizations like even the Jawaharlal Nehru Gyanodaya program, there is a talk about public-private partnership to ensure high-quality education. Now, unfortunately, in this area too, we have been bogged down by corruption. We have been talked about by bureaucratic hurdles. In fact, it's very difficult to do business. And when you are young leaders over here today, when you go to set up a firm outside, even if you're a private individual or an entrepreneur, you will realize the levels to which there are bureaucratic hurdles in getting approvals and getting clearances from the state or from the center, whether it relates to forest, whether it relates to Ministry of Industry, Power, any situation of that. Now, more than that, poor roads, ports, and railways are viewed, which are major constraints to the system. We have talked about corruption. We have talked about protests relating to these issues, whether it is land grab, whether we are talking about new projects coming up. But fortunately for us, the Indian government has affirmed a commitment to infrastructure, which is at about $48 billion in the next couple of years' time. The next challenge, which is I think more to do with the program today, is on human resource. India has a large English-speaking group. Institutions and training colleges have become phenomenal success, offering training programs for the knowledge workers. Initially, we were able to generate experienced, technically savvy, and a very globally competitive workforce. However, in the last few years, not many reforms have taken place, leading to severe shortages of knowledge workers, creating a very unhealthy dynamic issue of compensation versus competence, which is a very dangerous situation in the future. In fact, today morning, I was talking to one of your professors. We talked about high number of colleges which are generating students who are passing out. But in terms of their ability to become a global workforce and be a part of the global change, I think many of us have not been able to do well. And that is why if you look at countries which are even like Sri Lanka, which Vietnam, Philippines, especially as far as the knowledge workers, and my friend Ram here will possibly talk about it in more detail, are able to generate today a much larger number of college students and academics who are able to get into the field and create success for their own countries. In line with the conference proceedings today, let us examine some of the HR areas that are to be reviewed in the context of creating competitive advantages by way of HR strategies. These include employee engagement, talent management, employee retention, which are areas of focus in the new technology, while industrial relations or employee relations, as it is called, are primarily highlighted in the older or traditional economies of the past. Leadership issues and competencies for individuals and for organizations are also very important. In the last about 30 years, when I was a student of Tata Institute in 1974, there was hardly any the words that we talked about were things like job satisfaction. We used words which are very simple in nature. But today, when you look around and see young students using words, they use words like employee engagement. They talk about words which are organizational citizen behavior. They will talk about leadership and such words which, an old-timer like me starts wondering what it is all about. In fact, if you ask somebody what is engagement and what is organizational citizens' behavior, you would at the end of the day get an answer which is very theoretical in nature. But have we been able to use all these words usefully to create a connect between the organization and the workforce? I think that is some of the things that we really need to examine today. The new body of HR literature has included employee engagement and talent management. Now, talent management and words, all of you who would have read Peter Capelli's book or areas of that, interested areas in that field, will all see this word called global talent sourcing. You will talk about how to get the right people for the right job with the opportunity to grow, etc., as being very important. There is a growing understanding among Indian businesses that human capital can help us. Now, in the knowledge economy especially, we are able to grow the asset, which is the human being. The cost of losing a trained person or a talented person and the impact on the bottom line in an organization have been monetized despite difficulties to show the huge losses that an organization can have. In other words, losing an employee who you would have trained over X number of period and then losing him for X, Y, or Z reasons to a competitor or to any other agency would impact the bottom line of the company. And here is one of the challenges that HR people will have. How do they monetize, or how will they be able to show to their company that these losses are very important, and if you are able to reduce the losses or make them zero to the extent possible, organizations can do much better. Now, employee engagement has developed from the concept of commitment and organizational citizen behavior, but in real simple terms, it means a willingness of an employee and the ability for an individual to make his company do better, and that being better on a sustainable basis. The other words that normally HR people use include involvement and enthusiasm at the workplace, or a creation of a positive attitude favorable to that of an organization. Engagement, in my opinion, is simply the passion and commitment and the willingness of an individual to make the employer succeed. Now, I want you to notice this word. The individual has to ensure that the organization that he or she works in has to succeed. There is a major issue of talent, as we spoke about. There is an urgent need for innovation in talent. And in this context, I think what Professor Balasubramaniam mentioned, there is a scope for partnering with academic institutions as a means of filling the talent pipeline, and this will become more and visible as time progresses. Joint development of curriculum and identifying promising candidates from the beginning of their career will become essential. In other words, a time is going to come where organizations will come to colleges like yours or institutions like yours and then ensure that you are admitted in their organization even before you pass out. That is the type of changes that I anticipate to take place in the next few years. Efforts at having university relationships and participation in campus activity with continued engagement and discussions of relationships with universities are going to be highlighted in the future. Now, the other issue for HR managers is employee retention. Employee retention is one of the major challenges for HR managers. The issue really involves putting a glue on the employment relationship using quality of work, responsibilities, recognition, respect, growth, and compensation in order to make him stay with the organization for a long term. Further, if the organization is able to relate themselves to the workforce emotionally, the advantages will be far higher. I want to put into the consideration of all of you two different scenarios in the current context. One, I would like to talk a little bit about the BPO sector, and the one I want to talk about the old economy, which is the automotive sector. Now, when we talk about BPOs or whatever terminology that we use, let us understand what are we talking about. Indian BPOs are characterized by formal, structured, and highly rationalized HR systems. They control people to the extent possible. Human resource places them in a strategic role which focus on employee involvement and commitment. There are issues in BPOs which relate to workload and at the same time problems of stress. This is more due to routinization and repetition of the job or the work that they do. Intensive monitoring, which is due to what we call as service level agreements that we have with our parent companies, cause this burnout. There are quantitative targets and difficulties in the workplace. In a recent study which has been conducted by an Indian author, it has been observed that workloads have found to be very, very demanding, leading to employees to be not able to cope up with the processes at work. This study reveals that models such of the BPOs have led to high level of monitoring, leading to coping tensions at the workplace. Now, this is a very serious social problem that we need to really understand. Now, what do HR managers do? HR managers provide examples of what we call best practices, or universal practices, in people management skills, which include performance bonus, organizing social events, providing transport, cafeteria facilities, educational scholarship, a referral bonus, what they call town hall meetings, which is a foreign term which has come into our dictionary, redressal of grievances, and creation of platforms for joint improvement. Most of these problems relate to tackling of workforce issues, but do not address, repeat, do not address problems of long-term career prospects which are valued today by a young employee. Promotions in such BPOs are very, very limited, leading to frustration and high turnover. I understand turnover in many of these organizations are 20% plus. Attracting workers and therefore holding on to them is going to be the main order of business in the new sector. These units also have reported social stigma from a point of view because high educational qualifications have landed individuals with low work quality and high expectations in so far as the workloads are concerned. Now, if we talk about the problems of the social issues which in the BPO, now let us look at, for the example, the old economy, what we call the automotive sector. I've taken automotive sector as an example. In the last few years, we have witnessed a series of industrial conflicts in many of the companies in serious employer-employee relationships. While Maruti as a name or Hyundai as a name or any of these other Korean or foreign companies are bywords for low-cost manufacturing, the labor policies have left these workers at the raw end of the scale. The issues relate to large-scale employment of casual and temporary workers with high wage differentials between them and the permanent workmen. With the serious turn of events, all of India Incorporate have evoked cries of reforms in the country's outdated legal structure or labor structure. The issue of workers' rights and they being treated humanely has come into the fore once again. As you might have read somewhere, the chief of Wipro, Azim Premji, he made a statement after the Manesar killing that this violence is now an example of social unrest in the business today. This mood of slow growth has resulted in falling job creation, which has caused the tide to come out. There is a great new wave of disenchantment which has been caused due to loss of employment. An analysis which has been done by an industrial relations expert reflects serious issues in management of people. For example, in some of these companies I spoke about, workers are not permitted to take a normal break to go to the toilet because production may be affected. You can understand that if there is a strike in a company and the workers want to come back for a collective bargaining settlement, they would be told that they cannot ask for increases in salaries. There is a high degree of labor in the form of contract and what we call as temporary employees. Problems of managerial work styles, suspensions and dismissals are very, very normal. Now, what I'm trying to tell all of you today, don't get too carried away by all these words which are used today in terms of foreign companies and the foreign cultures. Because if you really look at many of the South Asian manufacturing systems and the Indian traditional way of doing business, there is a very major conflict. So many of you who would land up taking jobs in these companies might suddenly land yourself to realize that there is a cultural conflict. For example, they may ask you to do things which are very, very unacceptable or unprofessional, but then you have to decide what you want to do in your life. Now, I also want to speak about a little bit on leadership. A recent study which has been conducted by an international agency indicates that there are major changes for drive as far as leadership is concerned. This is due to global competition, the demand for customers in terms of high product quality, product and services, and hence organizations are spending a lot of time in terms of leadership development strategies. Leadership, in my opinion, is the ability of recognizing that it is the job of other leaders to develop other leaders. In fact, if I am a leader, I should be able to seize and grow and develop my other colleagues who I see as leaders. All development strategies will require an understanding of future scenarios and competencies required to fill in these obligations. In addition to identifying leaders, there is also the need to communicate these in a very articulate manner to your organization internally and externally. Effective leaders have to create opportunities in increasing organizational capability. Now, HR normally uses performance appraisals and assessments to identify competencies of people. It is therefore the role of HR department to continue such activities to identify and develop competencies to people. Leadership is also becoming spoken about in the top management and chairman's office levels with various companies. HR leaders have to identify these issues. HR managers have to understand what change is all about and implement very great change management techniques. Now, the question that you might ask me is that I have spoken about a BPO, I have spoken about what is happening in the automotive industry, what do we really need to do? Now, one of the areas where companies are really taking a change is using what practices under various quality awards. Now, I would urge all of you to study what is called the Malcolm Baldrige Quality Awards. I would like you to study what is called the Indian version of the Ramakrishna Bajaj Quality Award. This is again a very, very effective way in which you can talk about improvement in organizations using quality as a subject. You as leaders of tomorrow will have to develop competencies in the area of achievement motivation, decision making, leadership, and also specific strategies in your own areas of business, whether it is technology, whether it is HR, whether it is marketing. I think you need to have a high degree of energy and also understand what you could do to innovate. At the same time, you need to be very, very sensitive to people with whom you work. In fact, one of the biggest complaints today among HR managers and among people who run businesses is that the workforce of today is very satisfied to look at a computer and work only with the computer. When it comes to really talking to people, when you're really required to solve a problem of your co-worker, whether it is a worker, whether it is a manager, whether it is a supervisor, many of the HR people refrain or are unwilling to talk to people. The standard answer that you get is, I have sent a mail, let me get a response back. I think what we really need to do is also cultivate a relationship or a transaction method by which we are able to understand what an employee or what our customer as an employee wants on the other side of the picture. The other issue that I quickly want to touch upon is the aspect of what we today call as emotional labor. Now, a lot of companies which are in the business of customers are also looking at how we can improve the labor processes using emotional labor. And there are also studies which I would like you to look at and examine as to how an organization can have better relationship with its employees and also with the customers using emotional labor as a concept. This is one of the more, what I would call in the last 10 years, there is a growing knowledge on this subject. So please have an examination on all of them, especially where people like you would like to go into the service industry. I think this emotional labor is a subject that you really need to talk about. I don't want to speak too much about the role of the trade union today, but yesterday, if any of you had a look at the newspaper, the chief economist of the World Bank, Kaushik Basu, he has spoken about the need in India today for undergoing very urgent labor reforms. In fact, he has said in his report yesterday that the number of people that have to be added on into the mainstream of employment today needs to increase, and that, according to him, is only going to come from labor reforms. So please also, for those of you who are interested in HR as a field, please also examine this issue relating to labor laws. Now, in the context of what I have said about poverty in India, what we are talking about agriculture, what we are talking about the old economy, the new economy, inclusive development will mean our ability to harness technologies in a way that we will be able to work closely with the poor, create technologies which model on innovation, and create jobs using more public-private partnership. Each of you today who are sitting in this auditorium, what was referred as student managers, I would call you as student leaders or leaders of tomorrow. You represent India next. You are going to be the new breed for an optimistic India. You have no shackles to shed off colonialism which our previous generation had. You have the energy, you have the passion to make things happen. You are today the global citizen and will draw on strong core cultural values that we have witnessed today in the beginning of the program. You are the global citizen. You are the future. And you as a young educated Indian cannot wash away your hands on the inequalities of the system, calling them as feudal heritage. By being global in thinking and collaboration, and by being local in addressing issues of poverty elimination, India can become a leader in creating sustainable future for itself and for the world. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
If there are any questions, I would be original program. Questions were not included, but if there are any questions, I would be. I can try to answer them to the best of. The other thing briefly that I want to tell you, because this is again relating to human resource. In the last, I think 30, 40 years, the emphasis on labor law has been coming down drastically. See, there is also what we call dilution which is taking place in the system. Now, you would have read about Industrial Disputes Act, you would have read about Maharashtra Recognition of Trade Unions Act, Workmen's Comp. Now, these are also things and subjects that you as students of HR will need to work from time to time. Please do not consider that these are unimportant subjects. Wash your hands off, because today what has happened, in my opinion, and please don't get me wrong when I say this, HR today wants to do jobs where they don't want to grease their hand. They want to do work which is what they call high quality, great English words are being invented as the time progresses. Because if you talked about 40 years back, there was hardly any 1 or 2 books to study insofar HR is concerned. But today, our attempt seems to be copying what every foreign company or every foreign country does. You know, today somebody will tell you about balanced scorecard, somebody will talk to you about a matrix, somebody will talk to you about all. Now, end of the day, my suggestion to all of you, think about how can you make your life simple, but very, very dedicated to the people that you serve. Because today when we talk about customer and the voice of the customer, in fact, if you study the Malcolm Baldrige and the Ramakrishna criteria or the EFQM model or the Tata model, the most important thing we talk about is the customer. So for you guys who are in HR, you need to understand who your customer is and what again a new word has evolved in the dictionary, value proposition. You know, what is value proposition at the end of the day? You have to have people who work with you, they continue to work with you, and they are able to relate to your organization into a long term. So this is, again, a very simple but very strong advice that I would like to give you. Please interact to the extent the computer is not the final answer. In fact, whatever we talk about de-skilling as the issue in management or people, what has happened is we have become completely devoid of people. All transactions today, rightly or wrongly, are on the computer. Whether you want to get married, you can still log on Bharat Matrimony and get married. If you want to have a facility in your company, leave, you log on into the computer and get leave. So what has really happened is we're cutting away human face time to time. And we are in a country where we have always valued people. We have great philosophies, we have great material insofar as our learnings are concerned, whether they come from the Hindu branch or the Sikh branch or the Islamic branch. There are strong traditions. So let us also not lose. Let us not say that we copy the Japanese. Okay, it was good to copy the Japanese when it came to TQM. But let us not say that we also would like to create something which is very, very unique and generic for us. Thank you.